Sive, Mwanda. Actually, it wasn't talking about. But I was about to command. While it's actually, not necessarily talking about. So at Pentec there was a course in multimedia, which was between, so it was first year 2010. It was a 3-year course, which was, as the name suggests, multimedia, a mixture of programming, basic web design, videography, and communication. I think that's one of the subjects I'm drawn to, but there was communications in there also. It was a 3-year course, started in 2010, finished in 2012. One of the benefits, or it's a catch-22, one of the advantages and at the same time disadvantages of a multimedia, at least from my perspective, is that it's an array of different things you can do after you qualify, per se. And it can sometimes be a challenge carving out which one of those multiple things you learned you would like to pursue a career in. So you can be a programmer because we were taught basic web programming. You can be a photographer, you can be a videographer, you can be a graphic designer if you want. You could be a web designer also. So I decided to go the programming route because I felt like I realized very early on in the course that personality matches the fact that I'm a lazy person, so if I can get something to do some of the heavy lifting for me, mentally anyway, I would always take that option. So it always made sense to me that programming would be something that I would do, telling the computer or getting a computer to do things for me. I just input things into it. It comes up with whatever it needs to. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
You've been working for a number of years now, since 2012, right? From on social media, Abantu Digital. Can you tell me about how you got to that point and how is that going?
So Abantu Digital is something I co-founded with a friend of mine, who I went to tech with. And that just came from sort of a lot of monotony in the workplace. What I mean by that is, I'm sure most people go through this, where you start off, and especially in the programming world, you start off as this junior developer. The only thing junior about you is your salary. Everything else is senior. You are thrown in the deep end, you have the exact same deadlines as the senior guys, you are expected to pull your weight, or if not twice as much as the senior guys, right? You control from the moment you get into industry, right? You start. Then you start looking at the project life cycle, and you're like, So a client comes to, especially if you work for a digital agency where there's different projects coming in, a client comes here and says they want this. Comes through all of these steps until it eventually goes to the account manager, the project manager, or whatever the structure is at the company you work for. It gets to you, you execute, you push it back out. Somewhere in this, because this happens quite a few times, hey, they're not happy, or you goes through revisions until they're happy. Somewhere in this, someone got a fat paycheck. And from that fat paycheck, right, you're the one who put in the work. You're the one who actually, not that everyone else is not working, but you being the last cog on the wheel, because you're right at the bottom as the developer, right? The work that you do is exactly what they're paying for. Yes, you went through all these steps, you do the work, someone gets the millions, and then when it's time to divide the profits, hey, you're just a junior. So here we go, here's $3,000 for you. Or in some cases, I'm on something in transport. I hope you get here every day. So if you look at all these steps, it's like, how do I become how do I cut out all of these steps? Because you've proven that you've got the skill. So you can build the app, you've been doing it for the past however many years, but for someone else. Why can't you do it for yourself? And Abantu was born from that, where it's like, you've been doing this for a few years now, and you feel comfortable with whatever tech that you're using. Hey, I've been doing these website things, whatever it is I'm doing. I'm comfortable, I can do this, I can start this thing end to end, right? It would be great if we could cut out all these steps and get one client where we are the project managers, we are whatever it is that we need, right? Because what that does is it cuts out all of these, because in this process, every single step is money that's leaking. If you start closing off those leakages and do it yourself, it's very difficult, might I add. But if you get that right, you essentially go direct to the source. Yeah, but this is what I'm charging you for this. If you give me this money, I will do this thing for you. Abantu came from that thought where every day I'm at work and I'm thinking, I wonder how much this app that I built is worth. I wonder what the company got paid for this. Until there came a time where one of the companies I was working for, I actually got to see the quoting or the billing, I don't know what they call it, like the tool that is used for people to see, or for prospective clients to get work done. And you'll be shocked at the stuff that goes on there. There's millions that are being paid. Millions. And then you start thinking about what role you played in this project. That was, for example, 3 million, right? If you look at the role that you played, 3 million, and look at the money you got for it, and if you think about it, devs in most cases get the short end of the stick because after all of these processes, someone has to execute. And someone has to execute based off of a promise that was made without them. The boss said we can do this in 3 weeks or whatever, right? You just get told, hey, here we are, we're gonna need this in 2 weeks, right? It's up to you spending sleepless nights, you discovering shit, you learning shit, you the guy who's actually implementing, right? Then you look at that 3 million, look at the work that you put in, and look at the 25th of each month. It never adds up, right? And granted, when you wear your I run a business hat, you start to understand that there's a lot that goes into running a company. Granted, the guy's always going to get the 3 million because he's the one who's responsible for all of us. He's got salaries to pay, that's great. But it's never a point, it never gets to a point where everyone is paid what they should be or more. It never gets there because every chance they can get to undercut you, they will. Because landlord wants to make sure his 3 million only goes down to 2 million after salaries instead of 1.5, right? So Abantu came from that, where how do we start our own thing here? And there's a funny story actually, because we actually got a client, and this is where expectation versus reality meets, and you get to realize why that guy's getting 3 million. And after realizing that, you want to be that guy even more. We got a client who's a lady who runs a construction company. She wanted a website. Now at the time, I had just learned React. Usim was the WordPress guy. So we figured this is a quick win. Do it, WordPress. Go for it. In my mind, I'm thinking, this would be great for React, but it won't make sense because at that point, I haven't fully learned how to architect a decoupled React app, have the back end of some sort, and host it. WordPress offers that. It's a very, very attractive proposition. You just fire this thing up, play with a few things, and it's done, right? The first thing that became glaringly obvious to me, or us as a team, was that it's never as simple as it seems. It's never ever as simple as it seems. So the idea you have, just fire up WordPress, it's never that. Number 2, client management is important. Managing expectations is important. Because you're starting out new and this is your first client, you want to please, you want to impress, so you bend over backwards. That burnt us. Handling the project, like the project management of it, setting timelines. Hey, when are we going to be done with this thing? If you get that wrong, they'll come back to bite you. So all of these different hats that I, in my mind, wanted to cut out by becoming that guy or going direct to the source, they made themselves apparent very quickly. Then you start to appreciate the project manager at work. You start to appreciate the account manager and everyone else who plays their role. Because if you think about it, at the end of the day, you don't get to interact with the client at all. You just get the project. But again, that project was a shit show, needless to say. We produced it, we were underpaid for it, the deadline kept on moving, she kept on wanting more and more things. Of course she would, because again, we came with the persona that we wanted to impress.
How much did you charge for this website?
That's another problem. It was 3.5, if I'm not mistaken, 3.5. Because the first thing you realize is
when was this?
This is when I was in Joburg, so 2015, 16, between 15 and 16.
So you've been working now this for 3 years?
Yes.
As a developer,
yes.
not by 2?
Yes. So we're at the point now where we're like, hey, Sive, we're comfortable in whatever the tech is, right?
So you charge Loman.
3.5. Because the first problem you run into, how do I package what I do and put a price tag on it? That's the first thing you run into. But do I do it in hours? Do I use the same model as my boss when I looked at his billing thing? You go, hey, I have a reputation. So how does this person know, or how do I convince this person to give me 300K for this website? Right? Number two, finding out what exactly this person wants. You want a website. The hardest thing, I'm sure you've come across this, is, hey, I want a website. Can you build me a website? From just that one, can you build me a website, there's a million different things that can come out of it. And deciding which one is the correct one, together with which one do you actually want. Making those things come in the same, if getting those two lines in parallel is the most difficult thing, one of the most difficult things, after you've decided how much to charge. So getting back to the story, we charged 3.5 for it. The work we did never ended. Mwanda at 3.5, we didn't think about updates and maintenance and changes and shit. We were just happy to have gotten a paycheck. Oh, it's 3.5, we did something. Guys, man, I'd just like to change this. This picture doesn't look right, can you just change it? That's our time now. The concept of retainer is foreign to us, but you should actually pay us for these updates. We never communicated it to her, so she's not expecting it to.
So as far as the client is concerned,
3.5 buys me
one
everything.
time.
Yes, you might.
Even change it 20 times, then you
For like 2.5, you are my IT department.
forever.
Forever. Should this thing go down, I call you at 3 a.m., cool, I will. And that's no fault of hers or IT, because we wanted to impress us. ISIS 3.5. Not explaining what the 3.5 actually covers and how we're going to go forward once this thing is live. Because that's another thing where clients that aren't managed correctly are very dangerous. So that was another challenge we faced. But how do we put a price on what we do? But how do we become very clear about what gets you? So clear pricing, what does that price entail, right? Another challenge was, we are two developers, right? This website has to look like something. Yeah, but it's 0.5. We had to find a designer too that we thought about.
So this 3.5, according to the client, includes its design, its development.
I want a website.
And a design in a way too.
Exactly. So now we have to find the designer, right?
The designer has to be paid at least 3.5.
Exactly. Right? Because we weren't clear in saying that your project is split in two, design and development, you're going to, what I'm going to quote, in hindsight, it should have been, this is what we're charging. Let's say we've got a guy that we use for design. Check it to him, hey, how much would you charge to design this?
And then
he puts his a line item on his own. Design, whatever the amount is. Development, whatever the amount is. Maintenance, whatever the amount is. Do you want a retainer, or how you base? That's all in the code, so that when she accepts, you are protected as the developer, she's protected as the client. All of this was also done verbally in most cases. It's fine. Sure, 3.5.
does this 3.5 include hosting?
We made her buy her own thing. But for the most part, we were managing it. So she just paid the $100 a month or whatever it was, $29 or whatever it was for the hosting. But we had to manage that every time. I remember at some point we had a FileZilla where we just kept on downloading, changing a file. It was the worst. But from that project, I think it kind of filled in all of the blanks and the gray areas that we had from being naive, from coming into the office every day and thinking, I can do this, man. Why a middleman? And then really just slapping you in the face and saying, if you do want to do this, this is what you have to deal with. And then being fortunate enough to be put in a situation where you actually try it out and see. Because in some cases, in theory, I'm probably going to have a need to project manage. I'm probably going. But to be fortunate enough at an early stage to be put in a scenario where it's in practice and see the outcome of you not doing it properly. I think that project was a blessing in hindsight. A huge blessing.
You had to go through that to fully understand
exactly
all these people about the process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
How do you manage all of this?
The short answer is you don't. You really don't. And especially when you start out, where I think in our minds it was, it's in the movies, man. You get developers that come home, code through the night, drink a Red Bull, and they're out. Until it actually hits you that not only do I have a 9 to 5, but it's not always 5. That 5 is not hard and fast. Sometimes it's 9 to 8. And that's the nature of the beast. After around 9 to 8, you still have to find some time to do your own stuff. Because so tend to see, it's going to be done. You don't really manage that situation. You just put your head down, especially in the beginning, and you do the best you can. You find little packets of time and you try and be as productive as you can. Weekends become more important to you, where you've got to make a decision. You must remember, this is now a 20, how old was I, 24, 25-year-old who he's got a decent job, he just got himself also the options of, okay, weekend, but hey, I could go out here. No, I'm in Joburg. So every Friday you have to consider, hey, there's this thing hanging over my head because the next deadline.
So even if that will not be you, were not
it's there, you're not really there. And weekends become very important. How you use your time, last Saturday and Sunday are your most important days. And how you use those 2 days kind of has a major impact on whether or not this thing is successful. At all, whether it actually works or not. Because then it's like that's where the sacrifices start coming. I want to be in the picture about this 25-year-old. He has to sacrifice a nice time, and that's where he feels he's thriving. I'm in Joburg, and everything is here. I'm Subilagaba, this is new to me. Every weekend I'm here. But that sacrifice needs to happen because you can't do both. You can't, so if when you are adding to the list of things you need to do, there's 9 to 5, there's your other work, but now a nice time is a third thing. You're adding another project to manage. Great time management, yeah. So you don't manage it. You put your head down and you work.
With it.
Yeah.
Do you do websites and apps? Okay. Let's say I'm a client.
Yeah.
Roughly take me through what is the process you go through in a client Diaco.
So, Abantu, in effect, as much as we do apps and websites for people, we are bigger on our own products. So what that means is we would much rather have our own product that we develop in-house that we go and reuse and sell, right? The side Abantu where we serve as clients, we've never actually explored. Neither have we ever chased it ever since our project, La Project LCC. I think the outcome of that project, or when we started reflecting on La Project, Sim was the one to actually say, but we're better off with our own product because that way we are the client. We're cutting out most of these steps because we know what we want, number one, which is half the time the client doesn't know what they want. So there's no budget, no one's paying anyone here, it's just our time. So there's no expectation that there's a Nigma. But you create your own product with the hope that people will use it and that will pay you. So to answer your question, we don't have clients. We don't have a process where we say when someone calls, and that's actually one of our biggest problems because we do get requests like that. And we kind of never know how to deal with it because the first thing is, if you want us to do a website for you, we're going to have to take time off of what we're doing for ourselves as the product, which is we're hoping this thing will take off, and find time to fit you in. And in that time to fit you, say it wrong, whatever we're fitting you in, because that means it's not, I say it's not what it is, it won't be.
You don't have the capacity to handle that.
Yeah.
Speaking of internal projects, and how are they going?
So our main thing is an app called The Assistant, which when we termed it or coined it when we were first having initial discussions was this thing should be a shopping mall in the palm of your hand, right? But it shouldn't just end with I ordered food and it's at my doorstep, because it goes beyond that. Plus the Canal Walk or whatever mall is nearest to you, you walk into this building and you have access to quite a few different things you can do. Yes, you can go and eat. Yes, you can go buy stuff. But there's also services like you can go book an appointment at Sobe, for example. You can request, buy tickets for an event. It's not just a tangible, hey, there's an exchange or there's an item for cash where this item needs to be at your house. Yes, at the very core, we are offering things in the comfort of your own home. So at the very core, the easiest route, or the first thing we did was carve out how to get a physical item to someone's home. Then add on top of that now and say, okay, this person must now also be able to book services. So book a ticket, book a doctor's appointment or whatever. This person now is also able to request. So I request someone come and clean my house for us. This is a classic example. I can request someone to do whatever it is that, you know, it's sales, requests, and bookings at the core of it. Then it's like, take that, because everyone's doing that, by the way, it's nothing new. But take that and tap into the untapped market, which is small black businesses. Small black businesses never even dream on being on Mr. D. Usiso's Pegala Amnandi, by the way, who has really affordable prices and has really good customer service, doesn't even dream of being on Mr. D. As the client, there's times when you're like, I don't want to KFC. I would like to go pig away and whatnot. But depending on what I have to drive to wherever those might be, and if a phone is off, I'm screwed. So how do we get La Sisi to, number one, right, expand and scale up her business, but also how do we make e-customers there too happy in terms of giving them variety and options? Ubuti on a farmer is next room, right, to take bush. That's what he does, bush and engom. How do we, right now, whatever you're doing in Lani as a required. Right now, you have to first go home, then make calls, and then go and find the farmer and then get the cow. Why can't I sit here, pre-buy the cow on the app? Now it's 15K, whatever the price is. Buy it, have him take it to my house. If you start thinking about it from that level, the capabilities are endless, especially if you marry it up with the life of a black person. And the things that we go through. Yes, it's nice, Mr. G, I can get a pizza. But now, as a black man who has to go through everything and do things, how do I simplify that process? How do I get to be able to have Amagunya in people's homes? Because that's the direction everyone is going now. COVID has forced us to think like that, where how do I make sure that the services that how do I make sure they can get to people's homes now? Because Abantu Digital, for whatever reason, or Abantu Digital aren't going to the taxi ranks they would like to. That's where Assistant was born, where it's not a foreign, it's not a new concept. But there's so much power in dropping the barrier to entry so low that small black businesses can thrive.
What do you think is stopping the Mr. D's of this world, Uber Eats, from doing this thing? Why aren't they doing it? Because if see and I want to order Mr. D, it's not happening. What is stopping them from doing it?
I think it's one of two things, or two things actually, in my opinion. One, the barrier to entry, the fees associated. Now this is from the Suzuki.
Okay.
From her perspective, the fees, she won't be able to keep up. She'll be operating at a loss the moment she lists the services like on Mr. D, because of the fees, because of all of the operational costs. In addition to her running her own business, she'll drown. Okwesini, and this is the saddest one, where Sine a tendency to self-sabotage as a man. So security becomes an issue, where Mr. D is like, I would much rather work in town where I'm less likely to run into issues where or Utakimani or whatever, than keep most, like the thing is like we've got 40% of people in town and 60% of cars. I would much rather operate on this 40% and make sure that this 40% is stable rather than expand and keep everyone happy but run the risk of everything else. And that's expensive. As much as it would be profitable, at what cost?
Who's at 60% of risk?
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's that where it's security, it's the safety and all of that. And that's a challenge that we also inherit, essentially, where in online practice was sustained or whatever innovations we try and bring to, or try and bring to the fore to help each other out. But there's also the other side of it where it's not within us, and there's reasons for that, but it's like we become our own worst enemy at times. Where it's very easy for a thing like the assistant, for example, to get to a point where there's so much self-sabotage to the point where assistant is now playing in the 40% down, which defeats the purpose now. So I think those are the two reasons I would give for Mr. D not doing that. Same thing for Uber, actually, and everything else.
So now, how do you deal with me now with is risks around 60%? Because you are going for that 60%. But as a risk says this was exactly. So what is the plan on your side about dealing as a risk?
So ours is also to educate. So it's no responsibility where we take on two responsibilities. Make sure that this platform is always working. That's great. That's the easy part. The difficult part is educating. But if I show value to a product, we didn't deny. I want to show so much value kuyo and show you how it will improve your life and everyone's life around you that you don't have, like there's no reason for you to self-sabotage it. Or Mr. D right now, if Mr. D said today, you know what, I'm whitelisting all small black businesses. Small black business owners themselves would appreciate it, number one, and they would also help in the education aspect of, please don't sabotage this because it's helping Songe in essence. But if Mr. D says but keeps the fees like this, you're not getting the buy-in from the business owners. That the business owners have a lot of influence in how this thing works. So what we say is drop the barrier to entry, get the buy-in in small businesses, and help them drive the process. So we're not an app saying, hey, just use us, we're cool, we're flashy, we can get you food at your table. We're saying, hey, we're a community, right? How do we keep the currency in here? How do we keep the currency in gas? But also, how do we educate ourselves? How do we move forward saying, let's not self-sabotage, let's not rob the delivery guy. Because if you rob the delivery guy, we'll see when you didn't get your money out. The delivery guy is in danger, the whole chain is broken. How do we help straighten the chain so that it's deeply etched in the community? First step is the barrier to entry, get the small businesses to buy in. So that's been our strategy, and that's what we're actually trying to get to. And I think it won't be an overnight fix, and it might not even solve this problem, but it's a good start. Even if we fail at this, it's a start, and hopefully someone can continue on this. And I feel like, as a society, that's what we need, someone to just start. Then the rest will happen, I feel, as time goes on. The assistant is going through a rebrand now, where we're overhauling everything, where it's actually called At Your Service now.
At Your Service?
Yes, which essentially that speaks literally directly to what we do. We're allowing people to provide services.
Okay, go on.
So right now, if you want to enlist on the assistant, look for At Your Service. At Your Service on Instagram, At Your Service on Facebook, Twitter, inbox to Sive, Mwanda, you can text them. My number's all over social media. And we'll gladly onboard you and explain everything for you.
So now, you said something about the rebranding. Is this why there was yellow?
Yes.
And then now there's purple?
Yes.
Okay, because I was confused. Is the assistant like thing of a past or It
is, because we're renaming and rebranding the assistant. We will start this as 4 developers who don't design. It was functional. The assistant works. It looks horrible, but it works, right? And that was our main focus, just to get a beta out there, or at least something out there for people to use. We got to a point where we always knew that it would need a facelift and some makeup on it. So now we've got a designer as part of the team. And that drove the whole, okay, cool, let's examine our brand as a whole. Does the assistant make sense? You say assistant, or the assistant in tech terms, you think Google Assistant, you think Siri, you think whatever else is out there. You type in the assistant on Google. The first 4 pages are Google Assistant, how to install Google Assistant, how to. So we were drowning it. We could never ever beat that algorithm. Well, the search engine algorithm. Then it's like, it made sense when we were talking about it internally, because this thing is your pocket-sized assistant. On this thing, it kind of assists you to get the mundane things done in your day. And this is I want gas night and let this thing do it. But then we started looking at it in practice and saying, does the name make sense to a person or you want it on a billboard? The answer was no. At Your Service makes sense, because that's essentially what we're doing, where it was such a sort of a light bulb moment. So At Your Service. That's what we are, we're at your service. Now that At Your Service is twofold. We're at your service as the user or the customer or the buyer, but we're at your service as the person selling, because now we say, this kitchen, kitchen at your service. right? So it's appealing for the buyer to provide their service. It ties into their social media, their actual service. But also now, as the person who sees this app on the billboard, at your service, well, they're providing services. They're at our service. So that's what sparked the actual service name, and that's something we're phasing in now. We should be launching the rebranded app very soon.
That kind of want to Guest Connect before the assistant.
Yes.
So where does Guest Connect fit into the picture? Is it an app now? Is it because the truck is running and all that?
Oh, Gas Connect is a business on its own, but that happens to be listed on this app. Gas Connect is a service, or one of the services that is provided on the assistant.
Okay.
So we had the platform, then we started our own company that we ran on the platform. So that company became the catalyst. So most people know us as Sive because they bought gas using it. So that was essentially our way of beta testing it, by also sort of making money on the side with the gas.
So what does Guest Connect do? If
They sell gas. So essentially, gas, they bring it all. So Gas Connect sells the gas. When you heat out and you want a garage. That's what Gas Connect does. But they do what they do using the assistant, which is the platform.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then you are the ones delivering this gas.
Exactly.
Okay. So now, availability and reaching Amazon. So, Nisuka, that's this is trend. I am selling chicken. Can people, because it business as example, as far as my cars are then under you know. So now how do I get my people? Can you service basically from anywhere? That's what I'm asking.
Yes. So the seller or the person who has the business is in control of, number one, where the business operates and who sees it. What I mean by that is the first thing we do is we ask where your business is. It says strand, right? From wherever your address is, how far, like we basically create a radius. So how far are you willing to go and make deliveries?
Okay.
Well, I got 15K. So what we say is this thing will be visible, or your business will be visible to anyone who's in a 15-kilometer radius of your address. And that's how it works, essentially. So if you wanted to service the whole of Cape Town, we can do that.
But you have to be able to deliver.
Yes. And that's another transition period we're moving from, where the assistant relied heavily on you doing your own deliveries, and you were already doing deliveries anyway. But at your service is now starting their own driver network, almost like Mr. D, where our drivers now are doing the deliveries, where you focus on whatever it is that you were doing. Now, what that means is that the actual service now kind of has to have more control over how far the deliveries can happen.
Where are you based?
Parklands.
So now I'm running a business, restaurant, and then Usantera orders, Usastrand and I. So are you saying you would have to run from a Parklands before this delivery network thing? You would run from a Parklands, pick up the food, deliver to...
No. So before the driver network, we relied on when Tenzing, you are already doing your deliveries. Okay. You as the business. So we give you the platform.
Okay.
But the platform allows you to add drivers. And there's 3 apps that we had as part of our ecosystem. There's Assistant, which is, this is where people buy. There's Assistant Manager, which is that's installed. That's what gets the notifications of new orders. Then there's Assistant Driver, where if you were selling your chickens and you employed me to be a driver, you would enlist me on the assistant. I would have an assistant driver. So every time you get an order, we pay, or whatever you need to do to fulfill that, you pass it on to the driver. The driver gets a notification to come pick up, and so it was controlled like that. So it was this time, your drivers would be stranded, right?
Okay.
So to touch on another thing where this whole driver network thing isn't going to happen overnight. So we're not saying we're dropping the ability, or we're dropping the feature that says you can handle your own bookings or drive deliveries, because the network will take years to develop in certain areas.
What are the fees involved?
Okay, so for the first 50, I think we said businesses, we were whitelisting it. Starting to, as soon as active service launches, if you call us today, if you sign up between now and when we launch, and you are the first 50 people, it's free, it's whitelisted. When I say whitelisted, I mean we don't take a percentage, right? Now, there's obviously fees associated with an online payment that you make. If you choose to have your payments via credit card, that's 2.9% of each payment that the online portal takes. So you would only be liable for that 2.9% if you
Going to the third party.
Exactly.
Okay.
From beyond that 50 people, we take 7% of each transaction. So essentially you're liable for 9.9% in total of each transaction.
So onboarding is free, and then transaction will be charged.
Yes.
Per transaction.
Yes. So there's no sign-up fees, there's no registration fees, there's no monthly fees. It's pay as you go. You could sign up today, right, and not make a sale until December. You're not giving us anything. You're not paying, right? You only pay when a person says, "Hey, you're from the company." Great. That transaction, when it comes to your account, I'll figure whatever was left of the 9 point what? My maths is on holiday. So 9.9% is gone, and you get the rest.
And then I'm signing up as a driver now. How much am I getting paid?
So delivery fee goes 100% to the driver. We don't take any of that. So with what we have now currently, if you've got your own drivers, that's up to you. But as the network, when we put an advert and say, hey, we're looking for drivers, that means that we decide with the delivery fee and 100% of that goes to the driver. If the delivery fee is $50, that man gets $50. And the delivery fee will be decided based off of the type of deliveries, delivery gets. It can't be the same as someone who deliver Mama Queen, for example, because we require more from you, delivery gas and all of that stuff.
Yeah. So now can one person be the owner, the delivery person,
and the driver?
And you would have to download Zonga's app. Is different?
On the assistant, yes. But at your service, we have all of that unified in one.
Oh, it's going to be one thing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That will be easier. You are basically running a business as friends.
Okay, yeah, let's go with that.
So how do you maintain, or rather how do you handle these situations where situation is taken out as friends? Because let's face it, actually just think of integration projects, SK.
Yeah.
There's always going to be that one person who wants to say, but now I'm trying to go this time around, next time around him. But you still have to be friends. We're all in guy. So how do you balance this situation?
Contracts. And it can't just be verbal.
So you have contracts, you don't necessarily friends.
Yes. Absolutely. Because that's what most misconception is around Yamba. I know you, I've known you for years and years. Like say you're a developer, I'm a designer, sure you can work, let's shake on it. Yeah, grand nice sharp, show them watch, yeah, show them watch, sharp. When shit hits the fan, there's nothing that was on paper. You could essentially take that whole company and go register it yourself as your own company. There's nothing a coin. Business and pleasure go well if there's boundaries, and boundaries are contracts. It's documented, right? Everything is in black and white. And then it's very important to have a code of conduct that the team develops, because remember, you're a team now. Your friendship is sure party when it comes to a team meeting, but code of conduct. We decide how to deal with things like this, where if you said you were going to do something, get in Chile, and you promised the client, if you didn't do it, there's consequences. So the team, in turn, needs to come up with how to hold themselves accountable. And that needs to be documented. And that needs to be part and parcel of the contracts. If you get in a team meeting, there has to be consequences. And the most extreme of those is there's a team vote by CAC and that's something we would agreed upon. And that's the only way to hold each other accountable.
How do you hold each other accountable planning by two?
Contracts.
Okay.
Thing is, nobody happy where two unyunga, isininzi unyunga. If it's by two, if I come to you and say, I want us to do something together, the first thing we need to do is, okay, what are our responsibilities here? What do you expect from me? In there, just that conversation is writing itself a contract. Then that whole meeting, your code of conduct. So you to sit in a room and say, how do we hold each other accountable? What are the deal breakers? What are absolute no-nos? And what is the extreme? Out. And what is the extreme? What's the worst case scenario where there has to be a way about if they say this most extreme thing is what's the consequence? What's the most extreme consequence? Is it dismissal? What is it? In the case of a dismissal, what happens to whatever profits that were there? All of that needs to happen in tech before you write a single line of code or whatever it is that Ian's as a business. That's the only way to do it. Otherwise, then what? It's like, okay, Skabed, or we had a misunderstanding, we shook on it. That handshake stands for nothing.
And now it's just basically about whose word,
Yeah, but
who's more convincing.
exactly. Why people do this all the time?
And we don't really do contracts at all.
It's a handshake. Yeah, we program sharp, no sure. Let me buy a beer, see to that. Sharp. We'll work tomorrow. We'll dig ourselves into the code. Now's the project. The project is done. The problem wasn't the work. The problem was the fact that we don't have a way of holding each other accountable. And it's difficult because if I'm your best friend and you didn't push, let's talk about code, you didn't meet that deadline where you're going to have this feature. The moment I call you to see, as a friend, you've got ways of just being like, no, fuck you, essentially. But in a not so literal sense, but we are born on TV again. That's friends. Because we've been doing this for 15 or however long we've known each other. We've been disappointing each other. We've had ways around that as individuals. So too. You're forgetting that you made a baby together. That business is a human now. You can think of it as a human. It needs your undivided attention, and there has to be consequences to either one of you doing something as our better business. Your friendship here was essentially, we are friends, Tina. But when it comes to that thing, we're colleagues or whatever the term is. Contracts and a code of conduct that is basically etched into the contract.
Do we have an exact date? Can I get it on BlackBerry, Huawei, iOS, and Samsung? When is it launching? Exactly. Can you at a point where you can say?
I'm not in a position to give it an official date right now, but I can say towards the end of May, worst case scenario, beginning of June. It works on Android and iOS. And essentially everyone who has the assistant won't need to do anything because we're not making a new app. We're just renaming and rebranding. So if you've got the assistant on your phone right now, we're obviously going to communicate this, but anyway, the next update you do
is going to change. Oh, so I don't have to wait till the launch. I can still use the assistant.
Yes, the assistant is fully functional.
Okay.
Yeah, you can sign up and sell on the assistant too. We've got a contingency of if you sign up now before our launch, we know how we're going to port you over. So there's no disruptions in terms of the buyer or the seller. So assistant right now, you don't have to change anything. If anything, you would just delete 2 other apps, which is the assistant manager and the driver. So driver now can see, that's another smart thing. If you think about it, if you make one app, right, your core app is at your service from a buyer perspective. You want to buy stuff, right? So driver or the store manager themselves can become buyers. Yes, they're providing services, but you want to make them, if they also saw something else or someone else, they can switch in and let's buy it. The downloads, which is a currency these days, the number of downloads, we split them in 3, which is a huge mistake. Whereas now, you're forcing everyone to download that app. Whether you want to sign up as a driver, whether you want to sell, whether you're buying, here's the app.
Downloads the app.
Exactly. So in the right? It just so happens that now I'm in Cape Town, I work here, I'm a developer. The software that I write on a day-to-day basis is software that is used predominantly by people that are down, let's say, the big cities, if you will. The struggles that Abantu are going through are just as important as the struggles that Abantu are going through. So it doesn't mean Klaus Elali, you don't have the same problem, you're fully convenience. You still have those issues. You still would like, sometimes we settle because that's not any option. Before Mr. D came, we were happy to drive to a restaurant because that was it. And the investors, you could move from the KFC, now they're 5 kilometers away. Mr. D comes and it's like, whoa, this is a problem I didn't know I even had. Well, the same concept needs to be applied right now, not from an implementation perspective, because the tech hasn't gotten there yet. Not enough people yet. There's a lot of value in getting your current implementations of your software, at least start thinking about a time when they will hit Isandao. And one of the important things about that is the education that needs to take place. Because you could get to a point where this internet isn't anymore tomorrow, but you still need to educate people because, again, you're solving problems they didn't know they had. The example I made about Mr. G, well, we didn't know that we actually hate driving to KFC. We did, but it's like we got used to it. Knowing a light on mom's internet is right? Is the only way they will know how. So we need to educate them and say, educate each other. I hate the word them because it creates we need to educate ourselves because some of the problems you have, given the right infrastructure when internet catches up, can be solved using these things or these platforms. We have a fear in technology as black people. And it's understandable because it's foreign, there's scams, there's all sorts of dodgy stuff that goes on online, right? Educate and build trust. As the developer or as the owner or the founder of Mr. D, for example, how can you get, Koromama right now, I'm sure, every now and then we have trailer, chops them, and I think it's right? Don't you think that mama would be great in the Oba? Unyanake, whoever. But all Abantu, as he said, is beast, away in man. Don't you think he ends the business more efficient in London? It eliminates because that's another pitfall. If you move towards Ibzo platform, as much as Asnama Islambina and Gwelita as a part of our DNA, it kind of makes us look forward and say, okay, because she requires you to have paid. That simplifies the cash flow. I think any business side is optimized now because she always has money in order to keep the cycle going. Versus does that mean a month end? That means that so if business is kind of at a loss now. And once I can't keep doing this, I can't keep the cycle.
So how so the tech is going to help this how? By providing this service school.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That's essentially what I'm saying. In Doyoba, I don't know how I think we need to close. She needs what they go through. It's funny how they're as close in English came out. There's a lot of challenges we go through as a lot, right? And as time goes on, things will improve, but we're always the last to get stuff. Understandably, because we're in the middle of nowhere, as the white people say. But if you think about it, if we as black people that are lucky, and I don't want to say lucky, privileged enough to be in situations where you are in the big cities and you're providing services or working for companies that provide services, keep it in the back of your mind that you were privileged enough and lucky enough and worked hard enough to get yourself out of that situation, but you're leaving behind generations and generations of Abantu and Abapa who have the same struggles, who have even more struggles. Whatever skill you have, always think about how do I use whatever skill I have to improve the way of life. I guess that's what I'm trying to say about your own anyway. And tech is just one other facet. And tech, I'm sure, will be one of the last things to make its way there. But information, for example. There's a kid, Elani, right now, who is in grade 10 subject, who's in grade 10 about to pick subjects. But Uketa with a blindfold on because Agana vision, he or she can't see what the possibilities are because there's no information. What's the point of getting physics? I can pick anything because if you include a 10, it's also a box because that's what everyone else does. Agayaz what's beyond. Agayaz that there's varsity, or how do you even get to varsity? Or if you ask varsity, it's a foreign concept, but only the elite go to varsity. What's this all you smart A student? But because of the fact that Ako information, Agayaz what he or she can become.
All she knows is
no one's opening a box. And that's dangerous because in thinking is restricted to Abba. Then she needs role models. She needs the people that were lucky enough to make their way out, to come back and just pour information. It's free. Like, you don't even have to go and buy anything. Just as prospectors, whatever it is, when you go back home, just think about, go to a school. Hey guys, tell me, hey, can I just hand out a pamphlet to everyone? Can I at least tell them what I do and how I got there? We have all. Now I'm no different, but this is how I kind of made it out. We have all. This is what's out there. The awareness fast. There's ways, because the first thing is Asnama. Yes, Asnama is longer, but if you don't know there's ways around that, Asnama, it becomes where it stops. But Asnama.
Boxer is the one.
Number 8, and lucky enough, she found out that Okuibasi wants to go, but when she broaches the topic in the Asnama, that's where that dream ends. Boom. Because she didn't know that there was other ways around it. Yeah. So this is a plea to everyone who made it out. Bring some knowledge back. Because I believe that you're not really successful if the people around you aren't, or the people where you're from aren't. You can't just be this one, where he's a billionaire or whatever it is, but who don't know what's out there. And your fancy private jet, that's not it. We are always look backwards. I think that's essentially what I was trying to get to.